Hello, I'm Esther Gitu-Ewart, and this is Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Rescuers digging through the rubble after Morocco's deadly earthquake say the traditional building style in the high Atlas Mountains is hampering efforts to find survivors. Mediterranean storm Daniel causes deadly floods in Libya, sweeping away entire neighborhoods in multiple coastal towns in the east of the country. And an exclusive interview with Melinda French Gates, co-chair Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on the annual Goalkeepers Report that tracks progress on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin with the latest on the deadly earthquake in Morocco. Here's what you need to know. The 6.8 magnitude earthquake wreaked destruction and devastation across Morocco as the death toll nears 3,000. Rescue crews continue to dig out people both alive and dead in villages that were reduced to rubble. Law enforcement and aid workers, both Moroccan and international, have arrived in the southern Marrakech region that was hardest hit by the Friday quake. The epicenter was high in the Atlas Mountains in Al Haouz province. Morocco is deploying ambulances, rescue crews and soldiers to the region to help assist with emergency response efforts. Aid groups say the government has not yet made a broad appeal for help and has accepted only limited foreign assistance. Morocco's Interior Ministry says it is accepting search and rescue-focused international aid from non-governmental organizations as well as Spain, Qatar, Britain, and the United Arab Emirates, bypassing offers from French President Emmanuel Macron and U.S. President Joe Biden. Hopes of finding survivors under the rubble are fading because many of the traditional mud brick houses that are common in the mountain villages crumbled to earthen rubble without leaving air pockets. Rescuers digging through the rubble after the deadly earthquake are warning that the traditional mud brick, stone and rough wood housing in the high Atlas Mountains is reducing the chances of finding survivors. Olivia Zolino explains.
As the search for survivors continues in Morocco, experts are warning that the traditional building materials used in the high Atlas Mountains may reduce the chances of finding survivors. We never lose hope and we never give up, says Antonio Nogales, president of the NGO Firefighters United Without Borders. But he says life gaps, pockets of air for survivors to breathe, are unlikely to form with this type of housing. The homes are sometimes hundreds of years old and are often built by the families themselves without an architect's help. Materials include mud brick, stone, and rough wood. Colin Taylor is an emeritus professor of earthquake engineering at the University of Bristol.
Problem with rubble and mud brick materials for the older houses, the whole material is so brittle. You basically got a pile of rocks and mud dust, and that just congeals together. Even though it's dry, it really won't leave many pockets that you could survive in, any air pockets that you could breathe through. So you're sort of almost being buried underground, if you like, by all this material falling around you. It will sort of pack itself around you. So it's certainly not a very conducive situation for survival.
Experts say even concrete homes often lack anti-seismic design, something that will have to be top of mind as the country looks to rebuild.
The big government decision is really around making sure you use modern construction forms in any rebuilding. Rebuilding in this mud brick form is just going to create the next disaster in 20 or 30 years' time. But that is a significant economic challenge.
Olivia Zolino of Reuters filed that report. Barda Manouch, a primary school teacher and social worker in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, tells VOA's Anthony Labruto from Asila, Morocco, of the challenges reaching the epicenter of the earthquake's remote mountainous villages because of landslides and avalanches. He also details the government's response that he has seen.
Thanks God, the center, like the center of the earthquake, wasn't in a crowded city like Casablanca or Agadir or Marrakesh. So the center was in the mountains, in like small villages. So the places that were really very bad affected were near the high Atlas Mountains chain. And that's almost like hurts many people, because people there, the houses there are not really well built. So all the houses, most of the houses there were built by rocks and dust and wood, and not really modern architecture. So the people there were in need, and for the moment they are really in a good need.
And I understand that they're pretty isolated too, as well, up there.
Yes. When I was teaching there, the problem there was when it snows, it's really isolated. And even if the state and Morocco they're working on connecting those villages with roads, but there are many, and people live there because they rely on their farms. They raise like sheep and goats and chicken, and some of them have lands where they plant olives and nuts and stuff. So they really need to be there, but the government is really working hard to connect them. Daytime is a bit warm, but at night it's like another season, because it's really high. I think it's 2,600 meters above the sea level. So at night it's really cold. I've been there and I know what it is to be there without a house. Everyone in Morocco is doing his best to help them, but some people, they find problems to reach those places. There are so many villages.
And could you tell me a little bit about kind of the response that you've seen from people around you?
It's trust me, it's really amazing. It's unbelievable. Like I've seen many videos of people. They don't have nothing, but they give in. And this is known about Moroccan people. Moroccan people are ready, and you find them there whenever it's about like cooperation, solidarity, cohesion. Every time someone or some parts in Morocco needs something, they are all together. It's like a body. Like if there is a part of the body that hurts, it's all the body that hurts. So everyone is caring, everyone is sharing. Every NGO and organization in Morocco is collecting goods like food, blankets, tents, clothes, everything. Everyone is working together to make this easy on the people in need.
That was Badal Manouch, a primary school teacher and social worker in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, speaking with VOA's Anthony Labruto on the challenges of reaching the epicenter of the earthquake. Another huge story we're covering on Tuesday is the massive flooding in Libya. Mediterranean storm Daniel is causing deadly floods that have swept away entire neighborhoods and wrecked homes in multiple coastal towns in the east of the North African country. The death toll from the flooding is nearing 3,000, with more than 10,000 people missing, according to the head of delegation for Libya for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. But the tally may not include victims from Darna, which has become inaccessible, and many of the thousands missing were believed carried away by waters.
In the city of Darna alone, there are more than 2,000 deceased, and we pray for their souls. There are still thousands of missing people in Darna, from 5,000 to 6,000 missing, and this number can increase very significantly.
Al-Mosmari attributed the catastrophe to the collapse of two nearby dams, causing a lethal flash flood. Prime Minister Osama Hamad of the East Libyan government says Darna has been declared a disaster zone. Libya remains divided between two rival administrations, one in the east and one in the west, each backed by militias and foreign governments. Thousands are feared dead or missing in Libya after massive flash floods devastated eastern regions, with a surge of muddy river water ripping away entire neighborhoods in one coastal city, according to local authorities and international aid groups. Massive destruction can be seen in images published online from the port city of Derna, home to 100,000 people, where multi-story buildings on the river banks collapsed and houses vanished in the raging waters after two upstream dams broke. For more insight, VOA's Paul Ndiho via Skype spoke to Monji Dawada, Executive Director of the Libyan-American Alliance based here in Washington.
Unfortunately, while the eyes of the world were focused on Morocco and the devastation of the earthquake that we saw there, there was a powerful storm that swept along the coast of the Mediterranean in an entire region of Libya, and saw a direct hit by this storm that caused major floodings in the area, and especially the city of Derna. And what added to the catastrophe is that there were two dams that were protecting the city from these kind of major floodings broke, and the water swept entire neighborhoods. We were in contact with some local authorities who were saying the city of Derna might not be inhabitable again because of the devastation that they've seen.
Mongi, you lead an organization here of Libyans in the Washington area. Are there any efforts on your end maybe to try to reach out to the people in Libya to mobilize resources out here to send back home?
The president of our organization, Dr. Issam Amish family, is from Derna, and he was not able to reach to them because of the communication is cut off, and we're hoping for the best that they are still alive. And we have reached out here to the U.S. authorities, asking them to, be proactive and contact the East or the West and offer them help. So we asked the U.S. if they could reach Derna, which is a coastal city, through the sea, through the Mediterranean, and we know the U.S. has a heavy presence in the Mediterranean. They told us that they are in contact with the local authorities and with the government of the unity government of Dbeiba, and that they are offering all help.
How would you respond to criticism that the authorities on the ground have been slow in responding to this crisis?
I think we have seen that there was no, even though a lot of the weather channels and a lot of the international organizations have talked about this major storm that it's about to hit Libya, we have not seen any early warnings, for example, that went to the region so people could take shelter and stay away from vulnerable areas. We have seen very slow reaction to the response. We have seen also devastated, very fragile infrastructure. The two dams I'm talking about that caused this major catastrophe, they were built in the 70s. And I think at this point, we cannot sit and point fingers. I think we need to get to work, get some lives saved.
You also talked about how these two governments need to work together, but there has also been a criticism that I've seen circulating on social media saying that these two factions are playing politics. What would you say to these two factions that are technically in charge of the country?
That's very unfortunate. We don't want to see that. The Libyan people need every hand on deck so they can help them get through this catastrophe. And I think everybody loses if we play that game.
My heart goes out to all those people that have been affected and to the families of those who have lost their loved ones. Monji, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Monji Dawada, Executive Director of the Libyan-American Alliance, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, September 11th was again a date of mourning and reflection in the United States. Stay with us.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, disinformation and propaganda seem to be plaguing the African continent as China and Russia are vying to expand their influence. What can the citizens do to get to the truth? Is disinformation a threat to democracy? Join our experts for an in-depth analysis on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depend on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, Madagascar is marking the official start of the electoral period after the courts on Monday cleared the way for President Andry Rajoelina to run for re-election. Despite his dual French nationality, much of the recent political discourse on the Indian Ocean island focused on a decision by the Constitutional Court to dismiss appeals seeking to void his candidacy. Tanzanian police are launching an investigation into opposition leader Tundu Lissu after briefly arresting him and other party members Sunday on charges of illegal gathering. Lissu was released hours later on through bail. He was en route to the Ngorongoro Conservation Area where Maasai pastoralists are protesting government attempts to relocate them. And the United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk is calling for a quote urgent reversal of military takeovers and return to civilian rule in countries in Africa where coups have driven out elected leaders in recent years. Turk's comments say the early tone for the U.S. top human rights body as he opened its fall session against the backdrop of conflicts and crisis. 22 years after the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the U.S., September 11th was again a date of mourning and reflection in the United States. Remembrance ceremonies were held for the nearly 3,000 people who died, with President Joe Biden promising to keep terrorism at bay. Here's VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias.
September 11, 2001. Terrorists crashed 4 commercial planes into New York's World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. For many relatives of the nearly 3,000 people killed that day, the emotional wounds are still raw.
It is 22 years, and this is the way I still feel like yesterday. I can't tell you. It's hard. It's my second child.
It just brings some haunting memories from that day.
In honor of the victims, a moment of silence was observed at the New York Stock Exchange. Several politicians, including Vice President Kamala Harris, attended a memorial service where the World Trade Center once stood in Lower Manhattan.
Christian Adams.
Bells tolled as the victims' names were read at the Flight 93 National Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And a military choir sang during a remembrance ceremony led by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin at the Pentagon.
After the attacks, Amid the horror and the grief, many Americans felt a deeper sense of duty to their communities and to their country.
Also in Arlington, Virginia, First Lady Jill Biden laid a wreath to honor those who perished. From a military base in Anchorage, Alaska, President Biden promised the United States will continue to disrupt terrorist activities in all its forms.
The resolve of the American people has proved we never bow, we never bend, we never yield. Terrorism, including political and ideological violence, is the opposite of all we stand for as a nation that settles our difference peacefully under a rule of law.
Biden also called for unity to help defend the principle of American democracy and paid tribute to service members and veterans who've helped protect this country from new terrorist attacks. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News.
It's time for Health Report, and here's Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest on the progress of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. Hello, everyone. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has released its annual Goalkeepers Report, which aims to track progress on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This year's report sheds light on the global maternal and newborn health crisis, which affects mothers across low, middle, and high-income countries. The report also highlights new innovations that, experts say, could save millions of lives. For more perspective, in an exclusive interview, I spoke with Melinda French Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Well, we decided to bring this issue forward this year, the importance of maternal mortality and newborns, because the world has made so much progress on under 5 deaths of children, but yet that first 30 days of life, and in fact the first day a baby is born, is the most dangerous day for the baby. And we're still losing 800 moms a day to maternal mortality. So we looked at the data from around the world. We have a number of researchers. One of them is Institute for Health Metrics. And we said, this is data that people need to understand so that the world can do something about it.
According to the report, the world has the tools and innovations to prevent maternal and childhood death. Yet these innovations are not reaching everyone. What are some of them?
Well, some of the innovations that we highlight are things like intravenous iron. There's a doctor in Nigeria who has come up with a way to do IV iron, which only takes 15 minutes for an infusion. And what we know is that it makes a woman less likely to hemorrhage during childbirth. That's a fantastic innovation that should be scaled up immediately. Azithromycin, which is a very common drug, something a lot of us use even if we get some other infection. It's low cost. It could be given to moms to prevent sepsis at the birth of a child. We highlight one other thing in the report. We highlight 7 interventions, but another one is a very simple drape, a surgical drape that put under the mom right after childbirth that it's called emotive, that can literally measure how much blood a mom is putting out or hemorrhaging from to know whether the doctor, the obstetrician, needs to intervene right then. So we look at these key interventions that can bring down the most death in women, and we make sure that all of them are ones that can easily be used in low and middle income settings.
And what can countries do to ensure that women in the most remote places have access to the care they need and to new innovations?
Well, several things that countries can do. One is they can make sure that there are enough midwives in the country that are well trained. They can look at their regulations to make sure that these innovations as they come out, this one that's coming out from Nigeria on intravenous iron, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor that gives it, that it can be a nurse or a midwife who can give it. So changing the regulation of who along the chain can actually do the intervention, that's another important thing that can be done. Making sure that women not only know they need to get to the healthcare facility before they enter labor, but making sure the community knows and makes a plan for that. I've seen that done in Malawi, and it's made a huge difference that women get to the healthcare center early, they can learn about other things that can help their children and their babies, but then they're not caught in a rainstorm where there's no motorcycle available to take them. That's when they get in trouble in terms of the delivery.
Coming back to the SDGs, we are less than 10 years to 2030. How optimistic are you about 2030 when it comes to achieving goal number 3 on health, particularly regarding maternal health and infant mortality?
Well, I think, let's be honest, the pandemic set us back. We've seen maternal mortality rise in places. We've seen underchild deaths not being addressed because the health systems are fragile. They were already fragile, but then you put the pandemic on top. But what we're showing this year in the Goalkeepers Report is we actually know how to save 2 million lives between now and 2030. So the 7 interventions that we talk about in this report, azithromycin, IV iron, a simple way of measuring hemorrhaging, a new ultrasound, a tiny little one that's coming out, these interventions can help save 2 million lives between now and 2030. So we want people to know, just like bringing down under 5 childhood deaths, I go like this because it was a graph of all those deaths coming down, it is possible to save these lives between now and 2030. And I think that progress will give the world more momentum to know we can save children's lives, and we need forward progress on this.
So what is your message or the main takeaway regarding the Goalkeepers Report 2023?
800 women should not die a day in childbirth. We can address this. We know how to address it. And we don't need so many babies to die on their first day of life. We as a world know how to save these lives. And guess what? Every life is important and it's worth saving.
This is the 7th Goalkeepers Report. Where have you seen the most progress and where do you think a lot more needs to be done?
Well, we saw amazing progress on reduction in poverty. We saw amazing progress on reduction in under 5 deaths, age 5 deaths for children. Now, the pandemic set us back, and we have to be honest about that. It wasn't something anybody in the world was expecting, but we're starting to see people, are definitely going back to the health system. We're seeing the health systems revitalize. So progress is possible. I worry the most, quite frankly, about gender equality. I see all over the world that places have made excuses and set gender equality back instead of the forward momentum, and that's the one that worries me the most.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on X at Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Esther.
On X, Lenore. Thank you very much. Be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at viewafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.